Video games. You've probably heard of them already. If not in the news, not necessarily always in the most positive light, then probably on the homepage of this very site. Let's plays, reviews, critiques, video essays, speedruns, walkthroughs, etc. There's a lot of content surrounding all those distinct types of playing and reviewing video games. But what exactly are video games? Well, most of you might say, well, that's easy, it's just interactive electronic entertainment. And it is, of course. Just like movies are just moving pictures, and books are just words on paper. But we're not here to discuss what video games are, but rather what they are. Hi, my name's Talzion, and I'll try to lift the veil off of the world of video games for you today. Part 1. The numbers. There are a ton of video games, most of which are all quite unique. Some games can feel a bit samey though when they're in the same genre, but in general, every game you play can be a very unique experience. From Civilization 6 to Doom, from Hat in Time to Minecraft, to StarCraft 2, to World of Warcraft, to GTA 5, to City Skylines, to The Sims, to Kerbal Space Program, to Candy Crush. There is a game for everyone out there. There are thousands of games released every year, which of course leads to the games industry being worth a lot of money. The video game industry is estimated to have had a global revenue at around $83.6 billion in 2014. For reference, that's more than double what the movie industry made that same year, coming in at only $36.4 billion. In 2017, that number increased to over $100 billion for video games. There is no denying that the video game industry is big, very big in fact. Its value has been steadily growing over the years and shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Gaming is here to stay. Value doesn't imply quality, however. Even though the value of the gaming industry as a whole is so high, that doesn't automatically mean that every game that makes a lot of money is necessarily a good game. Budgets in video games can be huge. The most expensive game ever made, adjusted for inflation and including the marketing budget, was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, released in 2009. First-person shooter with a great single-player campaign and a heavy focus on the multiplayer aspect. Though the budget for game development itself was only $50 million, its marketing budget was 4 times that, coming in at a whopping $200 million at the time for marketing purposes only. The most expensive game based purely on development cost, however, is Star Wars The Old Republic, an MMORPG or massively multiplayer online role-playing game based on the Star Wars universe. Part 2. The people. Video gaming nowadays exists largely in 3 big parts: the PC gaming market, the console gaming market, and the mobile gaming market. The latter being by far the largest of the 3 in terms of revenue at 42% in 2017. Console gaming following suit with a 31% share, and PC gaming taking up the remaining 27% of the overall revenue. We also have browser games and arcade games. Browser games are mostly focused on casual crowds such as Facebook users, think Farmville, or found on sites such as Newgrounds, where anyone can make a flash game and make it public for the world to see. While arcade games are slowly disappearing, save for dedicated communities or cultures, like in Japan for instance, arcade games can be considered the origin of video games itself, seeing as in the beginning arcades were the only place to even play them, until Magnavox brought gaming into your living room with the Magnavox Odyssey, the first home video game console. Gaming at home only became really popular following the release of the classic Pong game by Atari for the aforementioned Magnavox Odyssey. Mobile gaming usually goes hand in hand with casual games, like Candy Crush, Flappy Bird, Clash of Clans, etc. Handheld gaming can be a bit more serious, with platforms like the Nintendo 3DS, the PlayStation Vita, and arguably the Switch even, with games like The Legend of Zelda, the Pokemon franchise, and a lot of family-friendly games like Animal Crossing. Console gaming is probably the most popular, or rather the most vocal community. Console wars being something unique to this community, with fans of a certain console by a certain brand defending their favorite one against the other inferior consoles. The rollover to a new console generation is always a very eventful time for these people, and for the games industry in general as well. Console gaming is done on consoles, of course. The current generation existing of the PlayStation 4 and its more powerful variant in the PlayStation 4 Pro, the Xbox One and its bigger brother, the Xbox One X, as well as the Nintendo Switch. The usual plug-and-play ease in using consoles lends to its popularity, as well as the lack of needing to upgrade individual parts like PC. A console is always priced the same, guarantees every game for the console will run well, or at least decent, though in practice this is sadly not always the case. Console exclusives are also a thing here. These are games exclusive for one platform typically, like Naughty Dog games such as the Uncharted series or The Last of Us for the PlayStation, the Halo series for the Xbox, the Legend of Zelda series for Nintendo consoles, etc. These usually serve as a selling point for the system, sometimes as a launch title or even as a sort of tech demo to show what the system is really capable of. Lastly, we have the PC gaming market. This one is easily the most diverse, as development for PCs is usually the most accessible, which results in more games. Everybody can make games for the PC. Flash games in particular were very popular on sites like Newgrounds and Armory Games. They offer a kind of freedom to literally make any game you want. This leads to a wide gap in quality between different games and developers though. The mouse and keyboard give a lot of freedom on how to approach a game. Mouse movement is more precise than joystick movement. All the different keys on the keyboard can be used for a variety of key bindings to use and rebind. There's also more keys on a keyboard than buttons on a controller. Strategy games especially benefit a lot from both the use of keyboard keys and the freedom and precision a mouse can give, which in turn creates and opens a path for unique genres on the PC, like the aforementioned strategy games. Strategy games are not entirely unique to PCs though, as some ports have been made, but those are usually dumbed down, like the infamous Civilization Revolution. PCs also give you the option to plug in controllers, typically used for console gaming. Those controllers can then be used on the PC for games more suited to it, like racing games, fighting games, and personally, I like to use a controller for third-person action games as well, like Tomb Raider, because 3D third-person movement just controls smoother with the multiple angles a joystick gives, instead of the 4 cardinal directions you get from using the WASD keys. Part 3. The games. So, finally, what exactly are video games? Video games consist of a lot of parts. And like most things consisting of a lot of different parts, video games are more than just the sum of them. You have graphics, sound design, gameplay, control schemes, story, voice acting, character design, animation, art style, etc. Video games, though often shunned in the media, are true works of intensive labor, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into making a video game. Employees who work on the game often work a lot of extra hours, sleep in their office, even lose relationships because of time constraints. Ideally, this would not be the case, but game development can be a pretty hectic affair, as we have seen after the release of Red Dead Redemption 2. The crunch, as it is often called, referring to the time crunch the employees go through in the last stages of development if there still has to be a lot of work done. A prime example of this would be the last entry in the Mass Effect franchise, where the largest part of the game had to be made in only a third of the envisioned time because of some issues. I'll link a video explaining the details in the description. Games also come in widely different sizes, just like movies and books. You have huge, sprawling games with open worlds to explore and tens or even hundreds of hours of fun and new experiences to be had, like The Witcher 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Red Dead Redemption 2. These games can sometimes be pretty buggy, have unpolished parts, recycled animations, or just a general lack of depth in other areas because of the scale of the game itself. Skyrim, for instance, while boasting infinite quests, lacked in the voice acting department, was very buggy on launch, and just lacked general depth in most of the game's systems. The infamous No Man's Sky suffered a lot of the wide as an ocean but deep as a puddle syndrome at launch, though the game has seen its fair share of improvements since then. MMOs, or massively multiplayer online games, can be played for literal years on end, as long as the game is kept alive by its publisher or developer. The big boy here being, of course, World of Warcraft, an MMORPG initially released in 2004, still going relatively strong to this day. You also have the quote-unquote smaller games, linear story-based games, like The Last of Us, the Uncharted series, and Wolfenstein reboots, etc. Usually have a set length of about 8 to 10 hours of story, often with different side objectives or different choices to lengthen the game, or different difficulty levels to enhance replayability. These games are often very well polished, seeing as there can be more depth present because the path of the player is greatly predetermined. Those more cinematic gaming experiences, like the aforementioned Uncharted or The Last of Us, are therefore very often praised for that, and with very good reason. There exist indie games made by indie, short for independent, studios. Those studios usually consist of a smaller team on a smaller budget than big AAA companies, but traded for more creative freedom and experimentability and just general leeway in how they handle things. Indie games can be and often are very diverse. A smaller budget and team often resulting in a smaller or shorter game with less replay value, especially if it's a story-based game. Those shorter games often have a lower price tag attached to them as well, mostly because people tend to not want to pay a lot for a game lasting only 2 to 4 hours, partly because those indie games usually have fewer costs in general. Genres in video games are quite diverse. There are arguably about 8 major genres, with a lot of subgenres each. Though the main genres listed are not necessarily all of them, the lines between genres are often blurry and can be mixed and matched accordingly. Action games, often focused on combat and shooting, with FPSs or first-person shooters probably being the most apparent subgenre. Action games are arguably the most played games of all because of their ease of access, low initial skill requirement, and constant action, as the name suggests. Adventure games, often focused in telling a story, sometimes a bit lacking in gameplay in general, in favor of exploration of either the game world or even the medium itself in the case of some more daring indie titles. Adventure games are still very popular, especially if combined with the action or RPG genre. Action-adventure games can almost be classified as its own genre, consisting of the story aspects of adventure and the gameplay aspect of action games. Games like Castlevania, Silent Hill, Metroidvanias in general, like Hollow Knight, are still held in high regards today. RPGs have a huge fanbase and have a lot of subgenres as well. RPG standing for role-playing game. In RPGs, you are often put in the shoes of a hero or adventurer in a huge, deep, often lore-rich world, filled with characters to interact with and places to go to. Either role-playing as an established character, such as in the Witcher series, or creating your own, such as in the Fallout franchise. The RPG genre is very broad and expansive, and MMORPGs, the massively multiplayer online variant of the RPG genre, are a huge part of gaming as a whole. Simulation games, focused on gameplay, trying to effectively simulate a real-life job or situation, or sometimes a sci-fi or fantasy-themed job or situation, as accurately as possible. The simulator game series, with games such as Farming Simulator, Euro Truck Simulator, etc., are very well known, partly as a joke, and partly by some hardcore people who really get behind them. Euro Truck Simulator, The Sims, Kerbal Space Program, City Skylines, more realistic racing games like Dirt, all try to simulate something as accurately as possible. Strategy games, either turn-based or real-time, put you at the head of a party, organization, nation, or stellar empire. The scope in strategy games can be immense, from leading an anti-alien guerrilla squad in their mission to stop the alien menace and managing your mobile base in XCOM 2, to actually leading the alien empire behind the scenes, observing some native species of non-interstellar empires, and building a Dyson sphere or ring world around the next star over in Stellaris. Strategy games are often very deep, with a lot of different gameplay elements to keep in mind. Strategy games are not very easy in general, though most are relatively accessible, like Age of Empires 2. If you really like to think and plan your moves ahead, having long sessions of hours and hours and still not wanting to get off, the infamous just one more turn syndrome from the Civilization series, this is the genre for you, and my favorite genre as well. Sports games, usually partly simulation games as well, either put you in the role of an athlete, like in FIFA, or a manager of those athletes, like in Football Manager. These are often popular, seeing as a lot of people play or enjoy sports in real life, and having the option to play those sports on a larger scale or a higher professional level than those people can in real life can be a lot of fun. MMOs can be put in its own genre as well. Games like World of Warcraft or Star Wars The Old Republic, shoving you into a huge world filled with other players who are playing at the same time as you, even being able to interact with them. Either for fun and community, to team up for PvE content, player versus environment, fighting some evil monster NPCs or non-player characters, or fight each other in duels and PvP or player versus player battlegrounds, MMOs are pretty social games as well. And MMORPGs are often the most played games at a time, World of Warcraft boasting a subscriber base of at least over 5 million players. MMOs are quite special, seeing as they are practically an infinite time sink. Most MMOs have repeatable activities or quests, have regular expansions to build on the content available with new areas, questlines, PvP and PvE content. WoW, or World of Warcraft, is the most popular MMO by far and has been a huge success since its release in 2004, save for a few subscriber dips and more recent a few more subscriber dips. Most multiplayer focused games in general are or can be infinite time sinks as well, often having a progression system to keep you engaged early and a prestige system like in Modern Warfare 2 to keep you engaged again and again, even when you've reached the top of the progression system put in place. There also exist idle games like Cookie Clicker, casual games like Candy Crush, puzzle games like the Professor Layton series, educational games, art games, more serious games, more joke games, party games, trivia games, etc. In short, there are a lot of games on the market, with thousands of games coming out each year. Not all games are good, though. Genres can be mixed and matched as well, creating a huge pool of different combinations and possibilities, both good and bad. Part 4. The Semantics. What constitutes a game being good or bad is not always as clear as it could be. Games like first-person shooters can often be graded on their gameplay, a story, if applicable, and the fun of their multiplayer mode, but games such as Gone Home or Soma are not that clearly defined. Games can be viewed from multiple angles and criticized from multiple angles as well. Two main angles which are often used are art and entertainment. Games are very obviously a form of entertainment, no argument there. Games mainly exist to entertain, to spend time with and have fun during that time, or to overcome challenges and feel the rush of victory, have fun with friends, or be moved by a well-told interactive story. There begins the trouble. At what point does a game become art? This is a debate that has been going on for a while now. There's not really a definition to use as foundation for art in general. The most used definition is often in the vein of a human creation expressing the skill or imagination of the author, to be appreciated for their beauty or emotional power. And most people I know use art is something that moves you, that evokes emotion. So emotion is a reoccurring theme here. Old paintings, or paintings in general, are considered art. Music can be considered as art, especially classical music. Books like 100 Years of Solitude can be considered art. Movies like The Shining can be considered art. But there are, of course, just shit paintings, shit books, shit movies, and shit music. So should any form of those media be considered as art? Or only those that are made with the intention of becoming art? In that case, is art only art because it's made by an artist? And if so, how does a person become an artist then in the first place? By making art? Well, in this video I'm not trying to debate what art is in general, but I am firmly of the opinion that video games can definitely be art. Not all games are art, of course, but there definitely are games that are true works of art. If not in the visual or sound department, then at least in the story and emotional department. Video games are hugely diverse. Anyone can make a video game, which is not always a good thing. The Unity engine is very accessible to make use of to create games and grants the user a wide variety of options to go about making their game. But asset flipping, the practice of just buying cheap assets from the Unity asset store, cramming them in a 3D space, and implementing very basic gameplay elements, and then selling the product as a game, are shunned by most self-respecting gamers and critics, as you may have heard in the case of Jim Sterling versus Digital Homicide Studios, which I'll link a very interesting documentary series of in the description. Gamers being a word that encompasses such a huge group is a bit disregarded in gaming communities as well. If you just play Candy Crush regularly on your phone, you could be labeled as a gamer, though most real gamers would not necessarily call you that, or they would call you a casual gamer at best. The difference between casual and hardcore or real gamers isn't super clear, but if you own a console or a PC on which you game, you are a gamer. The sense of superiority of the real gamers over and sometimes even disdain against casual gamers can be something very scary that can bar any new people from entering the community. This is known as gatekeeping. The average age of the gamer is about 35 as well, and women make up about 48% of the gamer population, though again this is very broad, counting the casual games. This does get rid of the prejudice most people have about games being either for kids or men only. Sadly, some outliers of the gaming community have been responsible for some truly gruesome acts in the past. Gamers being responsible for shootings. Gamers themselves losing their lives to overcommitment, like this one guy who died after playing a lot of World of Warcraft in one sitting. The death of social lives, seeing as some games can be highly addictive. Games often play on that addictiveness to get more sales or to keep players playing for longer, which means getting more money out of them. Gaming disorder is now also a classified disorder, recently decreed by the World Health Organization. Games are, by extension, sadly still often negatively depicted in the media. Even though studies have shown playing violent video games does not necessarily make you a violent person. Games in general are just an evolution of entertainment in the end. Like books were an evolution on verbal stories, movies were an evolution on books, games are arguably an evolution on movies. The Metal Gear Solid series often being called a movie game as an example. Whatever you have to say or think about games, Whether you like them or not, whether you know people who game, are a gamer yourself, or plan on becoming a gamer one day. Games are literally for everyone, and the range of people playing them will only increase over time. I truly hope you end up enjoying your time with video games if you either already play them or plan to play them in the future. Please remember not to overdo it though, for your own sake and health. Thank you very much for watching. I know everyone says it, but I do mean it. Follow me on Twitter, leave a comment, feel free to leave any feedback you'd like. This is the second time I attempted to make a YouTube video, but this is the first one of this length. This one will probably be ending up about 25 minutes or something, looking at the footage I already have, which is pretty substantial, I think. Doing all the voice lines, editing everything together. Still very new to me, so apologies for lack of quality. I haven't really gotten any feedback on my first video yet, so not much I could have gone on there. Not that I mind, of course, it's not a very good video in general. I did end up getting some lovely advice from a pal on Discord. He's a great guy. I'll link his channel in the description as well. I do think my voice lines are a bit better though this time around, but I fear my accent can be a bit bad sometimes, seeing as I'm not a native English speaker. If you've made it this far into the video, thanks. Feel free to leave a comment or any type of feedback in general, would be highly appreciated. Depending on how well this video is received, as well as whether I'll have enough free time to work on videos, and most importantly, if I have any good ideas for future videos, because I'm not sure entirely what I'm planning to do with this channel, if I'm even planning to do anything at all. Now, this video was about video games in general. The previous one wasn't about video games, so I mean, I could be doing game-centered content in the future, maybe game reviews. Even though there are already a lot of game reviewers out there, very good ones, also very entertaining and interesting ones like Mandalore Gaming, Shami TV, Joseph Anderson. Those are my three big inspirations, so to say. So I don't know whether I'd bring enough new, things, flair, personality, whatever to the table to distinguish myself. Or, something along those lines. I also wouldn't know what style to go for, because, like Mandalore Gaming, he does mostly informative reviews, with some comedy sprinkled in, while Shami does a little more cynical, but also a little more comical stuff, I think. While Joseph Anderson usually doesn't have a lot of jokes, but some jokes. But he's more, very in-depth, 3-hour long videos about how to be his best wife and how to fuck dragons. So I also wouldn't know what style to go for. Maybe something more comedy-esque, shorter reviews, or more serious, long-form reviews. It all depends on, what I think I'm good at, I guess. Even though I don't think I'm good at anything at the moment, YouTube related at least. I also don't necessarily want to copy anyone, because Mandalore Gaming, Shami TV, Joseph Anderson, they are like my game YouTube idols, I guess, for like reviews and critiques and stuff. But that doesn't mean that I want to become the Joseph Anderson 2.0. I mean, I would like to, of course, but if you're like the clone of an established YouTuber, that doesn't usually go over very well with your audience or their audience or both. But I mean, that's something I'll have to find out for myself, of course. Greatness is in action, I guess. Okay, so apologies for the end of the video ramble. I'm going to try not to make this a tradition to like rattle off huge amounts of things, personal info or whatever at the end of every video. But seeing as this is my second one, I thought it would be kind of interesting for either the people that are here, that are coming here, the people that hopefully will stay if I make some more stuff in the future, or for the people that see me in the future and think, oh, this is a great YouTuber, I wonder what his first videos were like, and then come upon this piece of art. Okay, so in closing, have a great day. Have a great week, have a great month, have a great year, and have a great life. Talzion out.